coach would pull the audible, like, no more audibles, Roeder. I'm like, oh, man. But Jesus calls an audible. And so let's pick it up here in verse 15. It says, when Jesus, therefore, perceived that he would come and that they, the crowd, would come and take him by force to make him king. Whoa. Someone say, whoa. He departed again into the mountain by himself alone. Guys, do you love going to the mountain? I love going to the mountains. Jesus went to the mountains a lot, alone. Now, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and went over to the sea towards Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. The disciples are in a boat without Jesus. Jesus hadn't come to them yet. And this was what happens next. Then the sea arose because a great wind was blowing. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, how many of you like to kayak? How many of you like to kayak miles? Against the wind or current. Okay. Very nice. Only Lynn. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, it is I. Say that with me. It is I. Do not be afraid. They thought he was a ghost. Then they willingly received him into the boat. They invited Jesus into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the land where they were going. They were headed across the sea. They were headed across the sea. Interesting story. In other Gospels, it shows this is the moment when Peter walked on water. When Peter said, Jesus, Son of God, if you are the Christ, tell me to get out of this boat and walk on water. And Jesus says, well, get out of the boat. Jesus is watching Peter. Peter gets out of the boat, walks on the water. I was going to play the scene from The Chosen for you, but it just was 6 minutes long, and it's just too long. But I love it because, first of all, they're terrified because they see the storm, and they see this figure off in the distance, and he's getting closer, and they're like, it's a ghost. You know, they don't know what to do, and then someone recognizes, wait, it's Jesus. And he gets to the boat, and then Peter's the rock. Peter's the passionate. He's the savage. He's the one to kind of act before he thinks. And he gets out of the boat. Jesus, is it really you? He says, come to me. And then we notice in the stories in the other Gospels, Peter starts sinking. And as he sinks, Jesus grabs him. And I love that scene in The Chosen where Peter's underwater and Jesus reaches down and lifts him up. And they get in the boat. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. But I love what one of the disciples, I think it was John here, the author of the text we're reading, he says in The Chosen, how can this be the second coolest thing I've seen today? Because they just got done with the feeding of the 5,000. He goes, this is only the second greatest thing I've seen today. It's amazing. Jesus is amazing. Say that with me. Jesus is amazing. He shows up and does things that blow your mind. I want to tell you a story of a different kind of storm. I was in Colorado. I was in my mid-20s, and one of the things and dreams that I had growing up is my dad had 2 horses growing up, and he had it for one purpose. Those 2 horses, one purpose was to go hunt these things right there, if I can get it to move. He went elk hunting in Colorado every spring, every September, every fall. And, well, it took me until my 20s to actually have time to go with him. In college, I was playing basketball, and the season was already started, or in school, and so now I'm out of school. I go meet my dad, and Steamboat Springs is really close to where we were hunting. And so you've got Denver, Colorado Springs, and Steamboat Springs is up in the northwest corner of Colorado, kind of. And so this is what happened. I'll never forget. And I'm just going to kind of read from my memoirs or my diary. We had just brought down multiple elk, and we headed back to the cabin to rally this group of guys that we were with to go retrieve the animals. And so we had some multiple four-wheelers, and we had some trucks, and we had 3 elk down. And so we needed to go get the other guys, because we had a hunting party of 4, and we wanted to get all 8 of us. Now, by day 4, I felt like I knew the trails. I was given a 4-wheeler when we got there, and we all had something. And so we were booking around and scouting and doing lots of stuff, and I was pretty solid on every ridge and every turn. I was confident. I was also amped because one of the elk that were down was mine. And I wanted to show them off to my buddies at the cabin. And I'm so excited. And so I yell out on the way out of the cabin, last one there is a Bears fan. Now, if you're a Packer fan growing up, that's the worst thing you could say. It's worse than last one there is what's the phrase? Rotten egg. Bears fans are worse than rotten eggs. Trust me. So I took off into the darkness. I was flying down the road, down the trails, and it was just, I was cutting through the Black Forest, really. And after a while, I look back, and no one's behind me. And I'm like, losers. Second place is first loser. And I'm just booking, and that's when it started sinking in, and that was I had made a wrong turn. I tried backtracking, but every time, I went to a left, to the right, it just looked the same. And I realized I was going in circles. And so, once that feeling set in, I realized as the little light came on, telling me that my gas tank was close to empty, I started freaking out a little bit. And here's why I was freaking out. The day before, there was a grizzly sighting, and somebody came to the cabin to make us aware of it because it was less than a mile from our cabin. And he said the guy shot in the air a couple times to scare off the grizzly, and the grizzly didn't run. He stayed. Maybe he was protecting a carcass of some animal that it was, had hidden, but the grizzly didn't run away. It wasn't afraid of the hunter. And so it was a dangerous bear. And so that's all I needed in my head to start freaking out a little bit. I'm thinking, I'm probably right on the same hill that bear is sitting, And it's funny, if you've ever been in the forest at night, the silence is really loud. You got crickets maybe there's crickets. But you got coyotes too, because coyotes are hunting, so you hear the howls and you hear the little yips and stuff. And I decided to cut my engine and just kind of sit there and think and wait. And in my rush out of the cabin, I had a flashlight and I had a pistol on my side. And I thought, I'm going to stay the night here. This is going to be like an overnight experience. And so I figured, well, let's figure it out. Well, it's in the fall, and it's in like maybe 6,000 elevation. Anyways, it was getting cold. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so finally, a couple hours later, I see on the horizon headlights. And I take my flashlight out, and I'm doing this, and I'm flashing, and they flash back, and I'm like, yes. You know who it was? My brother Mike. In my car, they had gone back to the cabin after they retrieved the elk, and they put out a search party for me. And I was super relieved, but I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And so from the rest of that hunt, my nickname was Wrong Way Jay. Wrong Way Jay. I don't know if you've ever been lost, but man, it felt so good to be found. That's exactly the kind of moment the disciples faced themselves in the Sea of Galilee. They weren't just caught in a physical storm, they were caught in fear. They were separated from Jesus, and the waters were wild. The night was dark. They didn't know where he was. But just like that light on the horizon, Jesus showed up. Jesus walked into the chaos to remind them, it is I, do not be afraid. Maybe you've been in your own wilderness. Maybe you've taken a wrong turn emotionally. Maybe you've taken a wrong turn physically or spiritually or relationally. Maybe you're out of gas, cold and afraid. Here's the good news. Here's the good news, and I want you to see this, because seeing is believing as well as hearing. Jesus doesn't wait for you to find your way back. He comes walking into the storm, into your storm, to find you. That's the beauty of our Jesus, is he doesn't wait for you to get home. He comes looking. He comes into your storm. And so, storm warning. Here's the situation. All of us are rowing. I think about the disciples rowing against the wind for hours. They weren't really going anywhere. We all are rowing against something. You ever been rowing against the current? Yeah, it's not fun. Parents, maybe you're rowing against family stress, keeping things tied down at home. Maybe some of you young adults are rowing against an uncertain future, not really sure what the future holds. Maybe some of you that are a little older, maybe you're feeling like you're rowing against drifting without clarity, wondering, what does God have for me in this season? Maybe you're a business owner or even a student in school, paddling through the storms of pressure, confusion, or maybe you just feel isolated. We've all had moments where we couldn't see Jesus. I've been there. Where we let fear creep in, and the waves grew louder and louder, louder than our faith. Jesus gives us three powerful insights here in the text. You see, what Jesus did is he withdrew from the crowd, he withdrew from his followers, but he was still in control. There are times when I don't feel Jesus right there. Now, I'm a feeler. I mean, Tom's a feeler, right? And so we definitely get up in our emotions, and Jesus can get us right there. But there are times when I have just not felt Jesus or God. And guess, here's the truth when that happens to you. Feelings lie to us. Feelings can lie to us. And so we can't be driven just by feelings alone. Jesus withdraws but stays in control. He rejects this human coronation to become the next king. Jesus wasn't there to be a political hero. That was off mission. And so Jesus stayed on mission. So, in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus talks about, I came to usher in the kingdom. He's teaching about kingdom, not politics. That the kingdom of God is at hand. You see in verses 16 and 17, the wind was fighting the disciples. And it was, the word there evokes danger and chaos. That they literally were afraid for their lives, and there was chaos in the storms. I tried to find my best stormy chaos picture for a background. Here's what that tells us. The disciples obeyed Jesus. Jesus said, you're going to get in a boat, you're going to go to the other side, I'm going to go up the mountain, I'll meet you. They obeyed Jesus, and still the storm came. So sometimes in our obedience, we still walk into storms. Following Jesus doesn't get you a free get-out-of-storm pass. I think you know that. That one's very evident. But this also shows that storms are not necessarily a sign of disobedience. When someone's struggling with something, some people that would be more religious than I, more judgmental than I, would say, oh, they must have screwed up. God's given them the old heavenly. No. Storms in life are not a sign of disobedience. N.T. Wright says, obedience doesn't guarantee a smooth sail, but it does guarantee Jesus' presence. It is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus walks into the chaos and brings peace. This echoes God's self-revelation in Exodus 3:14. Their fear melts when they receive Jesus into the boat. When Jesus gets into the boat and kind of helps Peter get up in there and gets in there, bam, it's like immediately they're where they were meant to be. And that's where we see the difference. Jesus speaks peace to the storm, and immediately the boat reaches the land. His presence, Jesus' presence accelerates progress. That if you're trying to get somewhere in life, if you're trying to figure something out, go to God first. If you want to figure it out your way, fine. Have it your way. It's going to take longer. Go to God first, because Jesus' presence accelerates our progress. So, here's a couple challenges. There's a few action applications. We're in God's Word. We're in a story that a lot of us know. And so sometimes the challenge of teaching and preaching is like, how do we make this fresh? And for me, the Holy Spirit really spoke to me on these 3 points. And first of all, it was stop rowing alone. A lot of us, especially guys, and I know ladies too, you're strong, you're independent, you got this, you're going to figure it out. But what you're really doing is isolating yourself, and all you're doing is rowing harder and harder against the wind, and you're going to get tired, you're going to get cold, and you're going to get afraid. So stop rowing alone. Invite Jesus into your anxiety. Invite Jesus into your challenges. Lead with that, and then keep rowing. Maybe for families, take time this week. You know, we have something called a family meeting sometimes in our family, and that's when we want to address certain things. It's not always negative. Sometimes we want to address celebrating something or somebody. Maybe have a family meeting and address the thing that your family is struggling with and take it to Jesus. Invite Jesus into your family's boat and lead by praying together. You can find peace not after the storm, but in the middle of it when Jesus steps into your boat. So don't wait. Don't wait. The second thought I have for us is listen to his voice. Listen for his voice. Let his "it is I" silence your fears. You know, it says in the Bible, where 2 or 3 are gathered, Jesus is there. And so for some of us today, we need to find our 2 or 3 and remind each other and pray with each other. Hey, I know you're going through this. Jesus is with you. Let's invite Jesus into this. I've just spent some time this week talking to a few people, not just 2, but a few, about praying over their homes and praying for protection because stuff's going on. And we need to call on Jesus' authority over our home and protection over our family. And so that's something that we need to follow up with. If there's somebody that you feel like God's put on your heart, go to them. It only takes 2. 2 or 3 are gathered. He is there. And so it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to see the storm and the winds and wonder what's going to happen. Jesus doesn't shame you for being afraid. Being afraid is not a sign of weakness. But don't let it lead you to isolation. Don't let it lead you to being frozen in your fear. Jesus speaks to your fear. And then the final idea and thought I have is you got to let Jesus in your boat. Turn to someone and say, let him in your boat. Let him in, Mike. Let Jesus in your boat. Sometimes peace comes not when the storm stops, but when you welcome Jesus in. There's the peace. So we welcome Jesus into our boat. We declare his peace over our chaos. And so here's the challenge for me. We need to stop waiting for life to calm down for us to come to Jesus. We got to stop waiting for things to get, like, you don't clean up before you take a shower, do you? Then don't try to get perfect before you come to Jesus. It's the same metaphor. Jesus is like, come on, let me in. I'm right here. I'm knocking. You just got to open. And so he's walking on the water towards you. And that's the kind of church I want to become. I'm going to jump ahead here. So stop rowing alone, listen for his voice, and let him in your boat. My favorite picture from this scene that I've found over the years, and I kept it in my photos of my phone, is this picture. And it's just a simple Jesus on the water inviting you to trust him. Now, in this picture, the artist is actually thinking about Peter. Like, Peter, you want to get out of the boat? Take my hand. Come on, let's walk on water. Maybe for you, that's what you need to see. Maybe for you, you need to take his hand today and trust him with the storm that you're dealing with. I want us to become a church that's known for this. That when the waters rise, when the winds blow, and even when the fires burn, that we can be a church that's counted on by our city to show up and show out. I don't want us to row alone. There's a picture of a lady here. This lady's name is Kathy. She lives in Caryville, Texas. You guys have heard of the floods in Texas recently. And she kind of wrote a story and it kind of got picked up by a newspaper. But when the flash floods hit during the July 4th weekend, her congregation's neighborhood was hit, heavily hit. They lost homes, they lost vehicles, even some of their own. Fatalities included 121 lives, many from Camp Mystic near the river. Here's the river that rose, 27 children. From July 4th through the 7th, over 20 inches of rain fell due to the remnants of Tropical Storm Barry. It's crazy, some of the pictures. The Guadalupe River surged 26 feet, mind you, bigger than 2 stories, taller than a 2-story house, 26 feet in 45 minutes. There's no place in earth that can manage that type of a flood. This area in Texas is known as Floodplain Alley. You know, it's known for it. 26 feet in 45 minutes, 121 confirmed dead, including at least 96 in Kerr County. And here's the stat that blew me away. 170 people still missing. Most of them from Camp Mystic. People that love to camp, people that love to RV, people like us. Despite her loss, this lady, Kathy, began volunteering at her church. They had a relief center. They set something up. I could see us doing this the next fire that comes through. And so here's what happened. She started preparing food and sharing meals and sitting with people who had lost loved ones. An elderly couple comes up to her, having lost everything. They began to weep, and Kathy held their hands until the words came. She took action before she spoke to them. Sometimes your presence is more important than anything you'll say. And then she says this, even when my heart was broken, offering hope kept me afloat. Helping others in times of need helps keep us afloat. This illustrates deeply how sharing Christ's presence can bring comfort in the darkness. Now, we know a little something about natural disasters, don't we? 2020, Labor Day weekend-ish, the wind, the fires. Yeah, you know, some storms hit hard, and then some storms hit home. It's when they hit home that it hurts the most. Whether it's a literal flood or a personal crisis, man, or just a season where fear, maybe exhaustion, it just overwhelms you. We all face moments where we wonder, is this going to pass? When is this storm? How am I going to make it through? That's when we need the kind of fight that doesn't come from within us alone, but it comes from the pack. The strength of the pack is in the pack. It's in us. Jesus is greater than my storm. It's because Jesus is with me in the storm. So I'm going to play a little video that reminds us a little bit about what happened in those days, in those crazy times in the fire. And I want you to watch it, and then we're going to close, and Tom and the guys are going to come back up. So let's go ahead and play that. Can I click it in and play it? Go ahead and hit it, Isaac. You got to turn it up. That's our little town.